listening to another edition of MCX Sports Podcast, 88.9 FM, Monmouth University.
WMCX Sports back with another podcast here on WMCXSports.com. I'm Mike Zimmerann, joined by Joe Lacalandra. And Joe, the Monmouth Hawks baseball team has a big couple games coming up in the MAAC Tournament, played in Lakewood, New Jersey, just a few minutes away from here.
That's right, Mike. Monmouth will host the MAAC Tournament in their first ever year in the MAAC. It begins this Wednesday at First Energy Field, the home of the Lakewood Blue Claws. I'm really looking forward to that. Those games will be broadcast on WMCX, and Monmouth opens up against Quinnipiac on Wednesday at 3:30 p.m.
Absolutely. The Hawks will take on the Bobcats of Quinnipiac. The expected starters, we are not 100% sure, but we are assuming that Andrew McGee will take the mound in Game 1 for the Hawks. McGee on the season 4-5 with a 3.71 ERA, and expected to go for the Bobcats is Thomas Jenkins, 4-7 on the season with a 4.42 ERA. So McGee versus Jenkins are the probable starters in that Game 1 for the Hawks on Wednesday. And Joe, looking through the Quinnipiac lineup, there's really one hitter that stands out.
Vincent Guglietti, the junior first baseman, had a heck of a year for Quinnipiac this year, batting a team best 341. He's in fact the only player on Quinnipiac to have over a 300 batting average this year. So a 341 batting average, and what I thought was interesting too, a 514 slugging percentage for him. His OPS is over 900 on the year. In 173 at-bats, he had 5 home runs, which also led the team, 36 RBIs. He's really the guy that Monmouth is going to have to focus on, and going to have to get out if they want to beat Quinnipiac.
He's certainly the run producer for Quinnipiac. Now going over to the Hawks side and talking about their run producers, you have the 3-4-5 hitters of Monmouth in Gronsky, Avella, and Sweeney. All three of them have driven in runs all season long. The Hawks are really going to have to rely on those three to carry them. Yeah,
you're right, and those are the veteran leaders of this team, and those three guys, like you said, have been pretty consistent the whole year long, especially Gronsky and Sweeney. We talked about Avella last week as a guy that really came on and finished strong for Monmouth. He finished with a 314 batting average and actually led the team in RBIs with 32, tied for the team lead in home runs with Sweeney with 3. Those three guys, like you said, they're going to be the catalyst for Monmouth if they're going to produce runs, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago. It really, for Monmouth, it's got to be those guys in the first couple innings. They have to get Monmouth on the board and give their pitching staff a little bit of help.
And with those 3 run producers, they need runners on base in front of them. And the 2 guys who will most likely be the table setters for the Hawks will be Joe Bamford and Steve Wilgus. Both of them very good contact hitters and great speed as well. So if we see them get on, we might see a little hit and run action going on.
And that's one of the things, too, that I'd like to see Monmouth do more often. I want to see them run on the base pass. They've done a little bit more of it the last couple weeks, but on the season, only 34 combined stolen bases out of 46 attempts, which is not a bad percentage-wise, but you'd like to see them do it more, especially with the speed, like you said, of guys like Wilgus and Bamford. And they've done a good job of getting on base this year. Both guys, especially Bamford with a 350 on-base percentage at that leadoff spot with his speed can definitely cause some havoc on the base paths.
Now, we mentioned earlier in this podcast the pitching matchup. Andrew McGee expected to get the ball on the mound for the Hawks in Game 1. But if the Hawks go deep into this tournament, they have the pitching to do so. We talked a little bit about this in the last podcast with Hunt, McKenna, McGee. But you also have guys like Singer, Tremarco, Chivarella who have starting experience as well. So that's one thing that's advantageous for the Hawks.
It's a huge advantage for Monmouth to have such a good, depth in their pitching staff. Although none of those guys pitched very well last weekend against Canisius, leading up to that series, Monmouth had that big winning streak going in. Everyone was pitching well on the Monmouth pitching staff. And like you said, it's not just McGee and McKenna who are the guys that you're going to count on to start these games. It's guys like Rick Dennis coming out of the bullpen. Dennis didn't allow a run the entire year. I mean, how impressive is that?
He's been coming on very strong for the Hawks past couple weeks.
And he's been more of a middle relief kind of guy. Then you look at the back end of the bullpen, you have guys like Fry and Paglioni who have closed out a lot of games for the Hawks this year. They've been pretty consistent as well. I mean, Fry pitched to a 2 ERA this year, Paglioni a 3 ERA. Both guys can come in and strike out guys as well.
Joe, I know you'll be down in Lakewood for these games for WMCX. Why don't you give us some more information on how these listeners can tune in?
Well, first of all, I'm really happy that we're able to do this week coming up. The game is on Wednesday, like stated earlier. Monmouth will play at 3:30, which is the second game of the MAAC tournament. The first game will be played at noon, and that will be between Fairfield and Manhattan. That's the 3-6 matchup. Monmouth is in the 4-5 matchup, with Quinnipiac being the 4 seed and Monmouth being the 5 seed. So like Mike said, you can catch that game on WMCX at 3:30 p.m. We'll have a little bit of a pregame show as well, so I'm sure we'll go on a couple minutes prior to that. Now here's the catch. The way it works in the MAAC tournament is that everything resets after each game, where the highest seed will play the lowest remaining seed and so on and so forth. So Monmouth will not know for sure who they're going to play right away if they beat Quinnipiac. That is all contingent on the Manhattan Fairfield game, which is played before them, like I said before. So they could either be playing Canisius, which could happen again on Wednesday, which would be 7 p.m. So they would wind up playing 2 games in one day, or they could play Siena the next day on Thursday. It all depends on who wins that Fairfield and Manhattan matchup. But you can tune into the game on WMCX 88.9 FM if you're in Monmouth County. If not, you can go on your computer to WMCX.com and click there, or on your smartphones, you can use the TuneIn Radio app and just search WMCX and you'll find us as well.
Thanks a lot, Joe. And this has been another WMCX podcast. You can log on to www.wmcxsports.com to listen to more podcasts from previous weeks, and also read up on articles that the WMCX sports team has written. For Joe Lacalandra, I'm Mike Zimmerman, and go Hawks.